On today's show, the Hawks made a couple of roster moves, and they opened Summer League in Las Vegas with a pretty interesting victory over the Miami Heat on Friday afternoon. We'll get into all of that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2020. That's 2020 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening here in mid-July. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. That also includes YouTube. Please be sure to like this podcast on that platform as you're watching it. And, of course, tell your friends about the show. A lot to get to on a Friday afternoon here in Las Vegas, evening back on the East Coast. The Hawks did open Summer League today. I was in the building for that game in Las Vegas with a 105-98 victory over the Heat. It was a fun one, and we will be touching on that in the second half of today's podcast. First, though, got to stay on brand, and there were a couple of transactions that have long-lasting implications to the big league club, etc. that I'll be leading with. They actually happened before the game today, but it was the biggest one, which was the signing of Nikola Đurišić to a multi-year contract, happened just before I went to the arena, so I couldn't do an emergency podcast, but this will function as that. And then later on, again, we'll be diving into what I saw with my own eyes on Friday afternoon in the desert. With that said, Nikola Đurišić signing a deal. The Hawks began Friday with only 12 players under standard NBA contracts, meaning they actually had 3 spots open on the roster, and they absolutely had to sign at least 2 more guys. You got to have at least 14 to begin the season when it begins in October. But by the middle of the day on Friday, those numbers changed when the Hawks agreed to a 3-year deal with Nikola Đurišić. Some of this is not going to be new to you, but if you've been following along closely, or if you haven't been necessarily, Đurišić was actually drafted in the second round of the 2024 draft. He was the 43rd pick about 12 and a half months ago or so. But then he had an injury that was pretty major to his foot during Summer League last year, about exactly a year from now, a year ago today, basically. He had surgery on that foot, missed 4 months, and then never actually signed an NBA contract. He was in the G League. He played directly for College Park, so he was kind of a draft and stash in an odd way. So the Hawks had his rights as normal, as I've laid out a few times on the show. You could basically treat him as if they had just drafted Đurišić this season in the second round and kind of threw last season out contractually. And effectively, that's what the Hawks did. Essentially, this would have been a very normal standard practice if the Hawks had drafted Đurišić 3 weeks ago when the draft was, I guess 2.5 weeks ago when the draft was, and instead they're just doing it a year later, basically. So I've always had Đurišić as a candidate this summer to sign a team-friendly multi-year contract that's similar to what happened with Mo Gay in the second round 2 years ago, and even beat Krejci, which wasn't exactly the same thing, but the Hawks had him on a 2-way, and they had his rights and had him over a barrel, basically, in negotiations. All that said, this is pretty similar to what they happened to do here with Đurišić. The Hawks do not formally announce contract information, but the first person I saw that actually had the report of the deal was Mike Scotto of Hoops Hype. He has it as a 3-year deal worth just under $6 million in total money over 3 years. I can confirm that is the case. It is guaranteed for this coming season at $1.27 million. That is the rookie minimum salary. The cheapest salary that anyone could be on that's not on a 2-way contract in the NBA is a rookie minimum. And that's where Đurišić is actually going to be sitting at this year on the cap and tax sheet for the Hawks. And then it jumps up to more than $2 million in the second season, like $2.5 million in the third season. But importantly, those second and third seasons are not guaranteed. The Hawks are only committing that $1.27 million right now to Đurišić, and that's all they commit. So basically, they get some upside if he pops and they want to keep him. He'll be dirt cheap for 2 more seasons on non-guaranteed contracts, a la Vit Krejci, a la Mo Gay. It's very team-friendly. And for Đurišić, he can now lock in more than $1 million in guaranteed money, which can be life-changing. It's not going to be set for life money, but it's certainly a lot of money to a lot of people, including me. So that is the upside for him, and the Hawks can kind of guarantee that if they want to, the rest of it as they go if he plays well. So there is some risk as far as him not being great, but that risk is mitigated by the very, very low cost of this contract in NBA terms. So overall, this makes some sense to me. It's something that I would have been open to doing as the Hawks. It wasn't a necessity in my mind because I don't necessarily love Đurišić. I think he's a perfectly fine prospect. I'm not over the moon about him compared to others. I'm also higher on him than some people. I'm kind of in the middle on him, I would say. But for one, it gives the Hawks more spending flexibility right now, which I'll talk about more in a second. But they clearly like Đurišić to some degree. It's going to give them kind of a 3-year bet on him if they want to have that with zero downside, given how little money the actual guarantees are. And look, it may not work out. He may not be good enough to contribute in the NBA. That is very, very possible. I would say decently possible that he's just never good enough to really give you a lot. But the downside, again, is basically nothing. So it's a very logical bet to make. I got a question about this. Could there be a wink deal a year ago on this, basically? And I would say it's possible. The Hawks did just change over GMs, so that'd be a little bit more difficult. Basically, the thought process of that question was, they didn't pay him last year. They didn't sign him, so maybe they just kind of a make good this year with guaranteed money. Conceivable, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that's definitely the case. It's just one of those things that's logical, and obviously we would never probably find that out because it wouldn't be allowed legally. But as far as a roster reset is concerned, after Đurišić is on the team now, officially on the roster, I'll do a deeper financial look probably next week when there isn't also a Summer League opener to cover on the same show. But the Hawks now have 2 spots open on the roster for standard contracts, plus they have 1 open 2-way spot because they also signed Jacob Toppin to a 2-way on Friday, the day before, actually Wednesday, the day before Đurišić. Toppin was going to be a 2-way qualifying offer. If you missed that, I reported on that earlier. It was actually Toppin and Keaton Wallace. They got those at the same time. It meant that Toppin could sign a 2-way at any point if he wanted to. He was also a restricted free agent in the meantime. And for these kind of deals, the single most likely outcome is just the player coming back on a 2-way, which is what's going to happen here. But Toppin is 6'8" forward. We'll talk about him more today as to how he played in the game. But he signed the first 2-way with the Hawks on March 4th. Played in College Park mostly after that. Actually had 17 points in the finale of the actual NBA season last year when the Hawks sat everybody in a meaningless game against Orlando. But he played in 15 games or so with the Knicks last year. He is certainly qualified, and I would say more than qualified for a 2-way. Interesting player, hyper athletic guy. Can shoot a little bit, can defend a little bit, certainly a very interesting 2-way bet. And we actually played well today, as we'll talk about later on. So that's that. The Hawks now have, again, 2 roster spots open and 1 2-way open because it's Eli Njai and Jacob Toppin are all on the 2-ways. Njai was really good today, I thought, defensively in his first Hawks outing. And then Đurišić on a full contract. So I would say internally, the Hawks have a bunch of candidates for contracts of some kind, but they don't have to do anything with any of these guys. Keep that in mind. They do not have to do this. So there was some reporting that I've touched on a few times, but you want to be every day. I get questions about this because I think people missed my clarifications previously, but I'm just going to keep trying to educate on this one. Lamont Butler, the former Kentucky guard, was reported in some college circles to be on a 2-way contract, but I have consistently over and over again been stonewalled on that by the Hawks to the point where I just do not believe that's actually the case. They could still sign him to that contract, but they have not and do not plan to, from what I understand at this point in time. So Butler is another guy on the Summer League roster, Exhibit 10 candidate, etc. But I'm not banking on that, and I would not put him in a spot. So when I say there's 1 spot open, it's Njai, it's Toppin, and then the open spot. So Butler is just kind of in the mix, but he was injured today, etc. Then you have a few guys that could kind of conceivably get spots from the Summer League roster. I would say Kobe Johnson, Adam Flagler, Josh Christopher, who the Hawks actually signed to their Summer League roster, I believe on Thursday. He did not play today, but he's a former first-round pick, pretty big name. And then I would also add Keaton Wallace, who is actually not on, he's actually not on a 2-way right now, but he's restricted, similarly to Toppin. He was actually at the game today, courtside. Does that mean anything? Maybe not. But certainly a guy that could sign a 2-way at any point, and even a minimum for Keaton would be not unreasonable. But if you can get him on a 2-way, I would love that if I was Atlanta. So lots of internal candidates. We'll see. But in the meantime, the 2 big takeaways on the roster contract front in the last 2 days are Toppin on a 2-way, which is, again, nothing flashy or surprising there. And then for me, not a surprise either with Đurišić being on a contract. People are not loving this. I get why. I would say, again, it's twofold. He is a low-risk bet. He also, look, it matters that the Hawks are saving about $1 million on this contract. That could allow them to have a little bit more flexibility under the tax. I wish the Hawks would pay the tax, but they're probably not going to do that this year. And yes, it's also fair to say, one more point here on Nikola, the Hawks could probably sign a better player today on a contract for the full veteran minimum. That is almost certainly the case. He's not ready to play in the NBA right now. That's my opinion anyway, but he's not. But if you look around the league, most teams, not every team, but most teams have a player somewhere on their full roster that is a more developmental player and that they're not planning to play a lot. I won't name a ton of those guys now, but they exist. Whether second round picks or free agents or whatever, international guys, however you want to put that, there's usually somebody on every roster that's not like a developmental player. And look, if he's a 14th guy, I will like it less. If they fill the roster out to 15 and he's the 15th guy, I don't mind that at all. As a reminder, last year, the Hawks spent 2/3 of the season with Cody Zeller as a total zero in that spot. Đurišić may not be able to play. And look, I think he's going to be in the G League a lot. Even on a full contract, he could be in the G League as much as he wants to be. And that's probably going to happen quite a bit. But I get it. He's not the best player in the world right now, nor the highest upside prospect, but certainly an interesting player, a young player, and a pretty free bet if you are the Hawks as far as the money is concerned. All right. After a break, to hear from our sponsors on today's podcast, we will get into everything from the opener in Las Vegas. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute you actually want to go to a game with your friends or with your family? Maybe it's already game day and you suddenly realize they actually want to be in the building for that event. That is exactly where Gametime should come in for you. At Gametime, it's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. With the money that you actually save on tickets, you actually splurge on food or drinks or merch, or even invite a bigger group of people to come alongside with you into the building. And at Gametime, they make it all possible. They make ticket buying faster and simpler for you all the time. Prices on the app actually drop closer you get to the start of the game, and they have incredible last-minute deals on the lowest price guarantee that also takes the worry out of buying tickets overall. They also have a clear seat views at Gametime, so you actually know what you'll be seeing before you walk into the venue, and you can take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account with Gametime and use that code. It's LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, and plenty to get to on this Friday about the Summer League opener. I will say I am going to cover all of these games. I will probably combine some stuff together. I'll probably repeat myself sometimes. These are not to be dissected in the same way as an NBA regular season game would be, in that it's much less about the process of how the game unfolded. It's much more about evaluations of players. It helps that they won. Obviously, the guys want to win. They're competitive people to be in this situation, but it's more about like prospect evaluation and schematic stuff if you're trying to look what the Hawks are going to be doing in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So I say all of that. Lots to get to, but I won't get to every single takeaway on this one game breakdown because there'll be much more coming. The Hawks play again Sunday afternoon, so we'll have another breakdown of that game and the next one, et cetera, et cetera. All right, to the starters in this one. It was actually Kobe Bufkin. It was Đurišić at the 2. It was Jacob Toppin and Asa Newell at center, but the mild surprise was that Nelly Jr. Joseph started the game at the 4. I would not have guessed that coming in. It was a pretty big lineup, actually, for the Hawks in the starting lineup. Basically, everyone other than the center, whoever that would be between Newell and Junior Joseph, is a oversized player. Bufkin at the 1. Đurišić is like 6'7" at the 2. Toppin is a much bigger small forward, et cetera, et cetera. 2 injuries, guys who were on the roster who did not play. If you listen to the Summer League preview that I did with Glenn Willis, we discussed Lamont Butler and Davon Smith. Both guys were out in this game. Not clear how serious either injury is, so TBD for Sunday. All we got was that it was an ankle for Butler and a lower leg injury for Davon Smith. Also, Josh Christopher, who just signed on Thursday, did not dress in this game. He might be able to play on Sunday. I'm not sure how much he practiced at all. Again, a first-round pick, a pretty talented guy from 4 years ago. Certainly overqualified for a Summer League roster. He was the Summer League MVP at one point. So obviously that kind of tells you something about his abilities, but also kind of a work in progress, not a efficient scorer, but it certainly has the ball in his hands a lot, et cetera. We'll touch on him when he actually plays, but he's on the roster, did not play in this one. So the Hawks were only carrying, I think it was like 13 active players in this one. The guys who did not play were Jake Stevens, Javen Johnson, and Jack White. Everybody else either played or was unavailable in this game. Also, there was a large contingent of Hawks players courtside, the full roster guys. This is not really usually my beat, but I was sitting right there in front of them. So Jalen Johnson was there, Dyson Daniels was there, Okongwu, Beat Krejci, Mo Gay, former Hawk Bruno Fernando was there as well with those guys. And then Keaton Wallace, as I mentioned before, was also in the front row. So that's 7 guys with like direct ties to the big league club that were in the building today. That's interesting to kind of note that. As far as the game is concerned, just some notes overall. They opened up with back-to-back threes from Newell on his first NBA shot, and then Bufkin hit a 3 as well. Bufkin had a big game, as we'll get into later on. He had 29 points, lead all scores in this one for the Hawks. They actually had Junior Joseph defending Khalil Ware, who is a certainly overqualified summer league center for Miami. So Newell was more of the help defender at the rim in this game for the most part, although he did play some center later on, I would say. And Junior Joseph played the least of the starters, which made sense. All the guys who played 20 minutes or more were basically the guys who have direct ties to the Hawks right now, with the exception of, actually no one. So there you go. The first subs after the starters were Adam Flagler and Ellie Njai. Then Kobe Johnson came in. Jack McVay played some. Njai was really good in this game. Had a nice mid-range jump shot in the first quarter. The Hawks actually led by as many as 12 in the first half. And then Miami had it going in a big way, kind of flipped the script. They led by as many as 13. So it was a big swing from up 12 to down 13 in this game. As a sidebar to the Hawks, Kasper Yakashonis from the Heat had a very, very bad time in the California Classic last week with Miami. First round pick who the Hawks probably evaluated closely. He was very good in the first half of this game. I think he had 19 points in the first half. Like, he was very good for them. I thought Toppin hit a very nice no-dip 3 in the right corner. If you don't know what that means, basically caught the ball high and then kept it high and then shot it from that position. That's an important trait to have a quick release in the corner, especially when you're playing with someone like Trae Young, who sets you up. All those things. It was tied at halftime after the kind of the back and forth of that first half. I thought Kobe had a couple nice drives and a nice half lob to Junior Joseph early in the third quarter. Njai actually had a hard fall and lift off the floor early in the third quarter. They ended up coming back in, which was nice to see. He had a massive block on Kashad Johnson, which was a lot of fun, I would say. Đurišić actually had, this is a crazy stat. Đurišić had 8 fouls in the game. Now, if you don't watch Summer League, that is allowed. He had 8 fouls with 9:41 left in the game. You can have as many as 10 in Summer League, but usually you don't see perimeter players in particular have 8 fouls, and he did it in 19 minutes to begin the game. That was a problem we'll come back to later on in this discussion. But I thought the Hawks actually had a nice wrinkle in the second half when they were kind of wavering defensively. They pulled up some full court pressure and really turned up the dial, I would say, defensively. Full court, 3/4 court stuff, on ball heat, I would say, and that definitely helped them quite a bit in the second half of this game defensively. The bench had some trouble overall. All of the bench guys, other than Adam Flagler and Njai, Johnson, McVay, and Dwight Murray Jr. had some pretty ugly plus minuses in this game, which is not necessarily their fault. It's just what it was. But then they played this lineup to close the game of Bufkin, Flagler, Toppin, Njai, and Newell. And honestly, if you asked me who the best 5 guys who to play together would be on the roster, it's probably those 5 guys. Maybe you could say one of the older Australians, Jack White and perhaps Jack McVay. But for me, it would be the 5 that closed the game. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened here. Notably, that does not include Đurišić. So that's interesting. But as far as like winning the game today, which is not the goal of Summer League at all, but I think when it was game winning time, that was their 5. And it worked, and they dominated the last like 7 minutes of the game. Like, they were down 10 with 6 minutes to go and won this game by 7. So they scored 37 points in the fourth quarter. Some of that was like some free throw stuff at the end of the game, but they had a 14-0 run in the fourth to go from down 13 to up by 1. Bufkin exploded. He had the first 9 points by himself of that run. He drew a 3-shot foul, made all 3, then had a beautiful right-handed drive for the left-handed player for a layup, a 3-point play on that one, and then he had a pull-up 3. He was really, really good in that stretch. And then Njai had a couple big plays there as well. Flagler had a great steal at like the 2-minute mark to actually bring what might have been like a pretty easy bucket. Just reacted beautifully, like just a veteran play from him as a smaller guard. Bufkin also drove past Ware, drew a double, and kicked to Njai for a big 3. It's probably the biggest shot of the game, honestly, and a nice play by Kobe and Njai to bury it. And then Bufkin drew another foul, rebounded. Like, he was just perfect, honestly, in the fourth quarter. Bufkin, I don't want to overstate it, but he was certainly the best player on the court in this game, which, by the way, is what you kind of want and have to see from a third-year player. He hasn't played a lot, but that's what the deal is. When he's going to be out there, he's got to be really good, and he certainly was in this game. There were 3 guys on the Hawks roster who were plus 15 or better in the game. It was Bufkin, it was Toppin, and it was Asa Newell. And that made, honestly, a lot of sense to me if you watch this game back. So that's like the overall look at this game. We'll talk about the players in a second. Oh, one more note. I actually asked Brian Bailey about this after the game, the Summer League head coach and Quinn Snyder's assistant. It was a point of emphasis, it seemed like, to win the possession battle in this game, and the Hawks were able to do that by a lot. They were actually plus 14 in possessions. They took 11 more shots and 6 more free throws than the Heat, and a lot of that was on the glass and taking care of the ball. So they only had 8 turnovers in the game. That's a great number for Summer League. I think Kobe said this after the game. I think Bailey did as well. Usually you see like a lot of high turnover games in Summer League. The Hawks did a great job not kicking the ball around the gym in this one. And then also they had 20 offensive rebounds. 20. Every single guy, other than Dwight Murray Jr., who's a 6-foot, third-string point guard, everybody else had at least an offensive rebound in this game. 5 for Toppin, 3 for Joseph, 2 for Newell, 4 for Njai, 2 for Johnson. Like, they were flying around, and that ended up being a huge part of why they were able to come back. And again, when the Hawks just put their starters, or their best players basically, on the floor at the end of the game, they kicked in the high gear. It was pretty impressive down the stretch. All right, so we'll dive in now to the player-by-player stuff. Again, not the same as an NBA regular season game, but just some notes that I have on some of the key guys. I won't go through the entire roster. I think Bufkin was certainly the headliner of the game today. He finished with 29 points. That, matters. Obviously, that's a nice thing to have. I am not someone, if you listen to this podcast regularly, you will know this, but I'm not going to be like the, points is the only thing that matters guy. That's not only what I do, but he was just in control. And I think in particular, late in the game, I tweeted this actually in the third quarter, I think it was, maybe early fourth, but I was like, basically, other than missing threes, it was exactly what you want to see from Kobe Bufkin. And that was true. Like, Kobe shot 2 of 9 from 3, which isn't anything, that's not horrific. It's fine. It's not good overall, but everything else, he was really good. He was 4 of 7 on twos. He was 15 of 15 at the line. Just getting to the line that many times is a good skill and a good sign for a third-year guy. Some good reads, some good passes, good operation offensively and pick and roll. He had a steal. He had 2 blocks. He was just in control. And I know that he cannot erase 2 years of being hurt for a lot of people, and that's not going to happen in one day. Nor am I saying that it should, but I think it was certainly a good sign from Bufkin, who was quite good in this game. And yeah, he's going to make shots. His longest stretch of healthy time as a professional was his rookie season in the G League, and he shot about 36% from 3. And that's all he has to do. I don't think he's going to be a great shooter, but if he makes enough shots, he's a good pick and roll operator. He's a really good defender. Like, I think at the NBA level, this is one thing that he's actually been proven to do, is defend really well. So I'm not going to go on and on, but I thought Kobe was like pretty obviously good in this game, and that was a good sign. And look, he might not be done. He might not play the whole week. That's always was already going to be in play before this, but he was the best player on the floor, in my opinion, in a game that featured, I think Khalil Ware is a lot more famous than Kobe Bufkin and did a lot more last year than Bufkin's done in the NBA, to be very sure. Bufkin was the best player on the court for the game in this game on both sides. So that matters. Elsewhere, Toppin was really good too. 19 points and rebounds for Toppin. He was actually a game best plus 21. A couple of really big plays late. 5 offensive rebounds, the no-dip 3 I mentioned before. He's a really athletic guy. Like, he's had some issues with consistency in his career from dating back to New York. Nothing bad, just like not always been like dialed in, but the tools are really there. He's athletic. He's got that prototypical like 6'8" combo forward body. The shooting has been okay enough. He rebounded the ball really well in this game. I thought he flashed really nicely. Good to see that after you invest a 2-way in him. And I think, again, overqualified for a 2-way. Really good signing to add him to that contract, and a plus for the Hawks in this spot. The other guy that I have to talk about, obviously, is Asa Newell in his NBA debut of sorts. 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 0 turnovers from Asa. He was pretty solid. I don't think he was great at all. He didn't say that he was either. Like, he was pretty like chill about it after the game. It didn't say he was great or anything. I think it was very, very clear, especially being courtside and being really up close to it, he's not strong enough yet. And again, that isn't me like giving an indictment on the dais of, I think the night of the draft, and then especially at his intro press conference 2 days later, Ansi and Asa Newell acknowledged that he has to get stronger. He talks about eating more. Like, he's going to have to get bigger and stronger. So that's not like breaking news. It was already going to be the case, but it was definitely the case today. He was bouncing off guys at times. And to be fair to him, you're playing against Khalil Ware, who's probably the most like ready center in the entire summer league in some ways. Like, he's already a proven NBA player and is bigger than Newell. But I thought Asa, like, the flashes were good. Defensively, he was really good. I thought he rebounded well. He was in the right spots. He made some mistakes, but certainly going to do that as a rookie. Brad Bailey talked about him being solid defensively. I certainly agree with that. Lots of good stuff on film, which I was impressed by. Offensively, it was a lot more limited. Nothing dire by any means. He's very left-hand dominant. That was apparent to me again in this game after watching that on film at Georgia. But nothing at all to say anything negative about Asa. I thought he was fine. He didn't like super pop in this game, but also that's totally fine. He was okay. And looked the part athletically. Like, he certainly is a big time athlete. We knew that already, and that was the case in person. Other than that, like, there weren't a ton more takeaways. Like, Đurišić is the guy that I'll probably be the least positive on of the guys who are like the guys who really matter. 8 points for Đurišić. He had a couple nice mid-range jump shots. Like, he's definitely aggressive at times and in a good way. That was always the book on him as a scorer. His passing was not as good as it's been at times. And, he took some inefficient shots, but certainly was fine. Had some nice moments in the first half. Defensively, it was like pretty alarmingly bad, I would say. Now, he did just sign a $1 million plus contract today. Maybe his head was somewhere else. I will give him some grace on that. That's fair to point out. But the combination of the 8 fouls, which you don't want to overstate how much that matters. I don't think it's like damning, but he was not able to defend without fouling, and that's not what you want to see. Also, he made a lot of mistakes and also let a lot of guys go by him pretty easily. For a guy with 8 fouls, he actually gave up a lot of easy stuff too. And that's what you can't have. You can't have both. You can't foul. So I'm not pouring anything on him. Again, my first segment stands. I think it was a perfectly fine use of a roster spot to develop him. You don't find 6'7" ball handlers who can create for themselves and others growing on trees. Like, it's fine to have that bet. He was also pretty bad in this game after the first half, I thought, especially defensively. Now, he looked to be kind of tired. He did mention on Tuesday when the Hawks spoke to the media that he's like less than 100%. He didn't speak to the media after the game, so we couldn't really ask him about that. He was wearing a like a thumb or a wrist sort of brace of some kind. I'm not sure if that was what it was or not. He looked to be kind of gassed. He hasn't played a ton. I mean, none of these guys have played games for a while, but I'm not worried. It just was notable. Like, his defense was pretty bad in this one. That's kind of all I have. Other than that, I mean, we can round it out with. I thought Flagler looked pretty good. He didn't make threes, but he always makes threes. That's like his number one trait. He had 12 points off the bench. Oh, I have to talk about Njai. So I forgot about this until now. Eli Njai is really good in this game. 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block for the two-way forward who was recently signed by the Hawks, coming over from Real Madrid. He's just a pro defensively, like, just knows where to be. Impactful too. He's athletic. He made a lot of plays. I was very impressed with him defensively. Offensively, like, he was in a tiny role overseas, and he'll be in a tiny role over here, I think, for now. He's not a super high volume offensive player, but he did take 4 threes, made one of them. Like, he was willing to shoot. He hit the big one late. I liked what I saw. He's definitely like my kind of player. Checks a lot of boxes, defends really well. Obviously knows how to play. So I love all that. And I mean, for me, like, he should just probably start. I don't care about starts that much, but play him as much as possible. Next to Newell, probably, as the Hawks close with that lineup in this game. Kobe Johnson, was fine. Jack McVay had some defensive struggles, I would say. Dwight Murray was okay in his 10 minutes, and we'll leave it there for now. Oh, and also, I thought in the first half, Nikola Đurišić was actually quite good. He was pretty active, 2 blocks and a steal. Definitely a big athlete, like 6'10", power forward type. Skill level remains to be seen, but certainly made some plays, just kind of mucking things up with his burst. All right. That's all I have on a admittedly longer than I was supposed to be podcast because of the full segment on other non-Summer League things. So the plan is moving forward. If anything breaks, the Hawks do have 2 roster spots open. The Hawks do have 2-way slots open. If they sign someone from outside the organization, I will do a podcast as soon as possible. If it's someone we've already talked about, if it's a 2-way and it's Keaton Wallace, I'll talk about it, but I won't be an emergency podcast, if that makes sense. But at the very latest, I will do a podcast after the game on Sunday afternoon. The Hawks will have another Summer League game on Sunday. They have actually the first game of the day on Sunday, even earlier than it was today. A 12:30 local, which means 3:30 Eastern time start on Sunday against the Suns. And then they play again on Monday afternoon at 1:30. So lots of early games for me, afternoon games if you're back on the East Coast. But stay tuned. Please subscribe to Locked On Hawks anywhere you find your podcasts. Tell your friends about the show as well, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. I am there at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. You can follow my non-podcast work about the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. As always, enjoy your Friday into Saturday, and we'll see you in about 48 hours.